Lesson number 8 of You Are a Mighty Warrior. We have one more lesson after this one, so we're almost finished. We're going to jump right into the lesson tonight and start reading in Judges chapter 7, verses 24 and 25. So all of the men of Ephraim were called out, and they seized the waters of the Jordan as far as Beth Barah. They also captured 2 of the Midianite leaders, Oreb and Zeb. They killed Oreb at the rock of Oreb and Zeb at the winepress of Zeb. They pursued the Midianites and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon, who was by the Jordan. Now that's what happened last week. And right now we're going to pick it up at 8, verses 1, 2, and 3. Now the Ephraimites asked Gideon, "Why have you treated us like this? Why didn't you call us when you went to fight Midian?" And they challenged him vigorously. But he answered them, "What have I accomplished compared to you? Aren't the gleanings of Ephraim's grapes better than the full grape harvest of Abiezer? God gave Oreb and Zeb, the Midianite leaders, into your hands. What was I able to do compared to you?" At this, their resentment against him subsided. You know, it was bound to happen. They just had a stunning victory. Gideon and his men were total underdogs. Remember, he had 300 men compared to about 135,000 Midianites and the other eastern peoples who had gathered to come up against Israel. Their commander, Gideon, who at one time felt the weakest of the weak, the lowest of the low, defeats this mighty army without even swinging a sword. And the word gets out fast, and the brothers down in Ephraim find out about it, and they get bent out of shape because they weren't a part of the action. You can be sure that if it had been a blowout the other way, a total annihilation of Israel, that they would never have said, "Hey, why didn't you invite us to the battle?" Of course not. But because it was such a stunning, beautiful victory, they're jealous. Now remember, there was a time where Gideon was told by God to pare down his army, to cut it back down. So tens of thousands of men left because they were given the option. If you're fearful, you can leave. And of course, they were fearful, so they left. And you can bet that lots and lots of them went back down to Ephraim. So now they hear what happened as a result of sticking it out, and they're jealous. Gideon, I so admire him at this point. He is in full stride as far as being a mighty warrior. He's shed his personality, the negative parts, the earthly insecurities. He's shed those, and now he's practicing the heavenly persona of how God sees him. Mighty warrior, I am with you, go on the strength you have. And he's capable now. He's showing how capable he is of leading this vast army, of hearing from God, and responding. And he uses tact, he uses diplomacy, he uses humility to put out this potential wildfire. He says, "Your leftovers off the ground, Ephraim, are better than the full harvest that my clan can produce. You guys got the head honchos of the enemy army." He uses the truth and he uses flattery to put out this jealous response. What could he have said? Oh, he could have said so many things. He could have said, "You guys, you were the fearful ones. Where were you when I needed you? You know, you were just full of fear, and so I dismissed you because that's what God told me to do because I knew you guys were going to come back with something like this." You know, he could have brought up past shortcomings. He could have said something like, "You have no idea what I had to go through to even get close to their enemy camp. You have no idea. Where were you when we were lining up with our pots and our," he could have just said so many awful things, and it would have fanned the flame of jealousy. It took bravery. It took humility not to chew them out. It took self-restraint. He is really showing that he is a true mighty warrior, isn't he? Gideon was able to put him aside for a moment to make peace, not to back down, because Gideon now was relentless. He was going after it, and he wasn't finished yet. So look what happens next in verses 4 through 9. Gideon and his 300 men, exhausted, yet keeping up the pursuit, came to the Jordan and crossed it. He said to the men of Succoth, "Give my troops some bread. They're worn out, and I'm still pursuing Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian." But the officials of Succoth said, "Do you already have the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna in your possession? Why should we give bread to your troops?" Then Gideon replied, "Just for that, when the Lord has given Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, I will tear your flesh with desert thorns and briars." From there he went up to Peniel and made the same request of them. But they answered as the men of Succoth had. So he said to the men of Peniel, "When I return in triumph, I will tear down this tower." Okay, so what do these guys care about Gideon's battle? They don't. They weren't Israelites. They weren't Hebrew people. And if they'd helped them, they were afraid that they would suffer the wrath later to come. So he doesn't have the victory yet, but Gideon keeps after the cause and is so incredibly focused. He doesn't allow the bad behavior of these non-Israeli people to go unchecked. He stays focused. He stays with the 300 men against astounding odds. Now the army, it says, I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to look at verses 10 through 21 here. Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor with a force of about 15,000 men, all that were left of the armies of the eastern people. 120,000 swordsmen had fallen. Gideon went up by the route of the nomads east of Nobah and Jogbehah and attacked the unsuspecting army. Zebah and Zalmunna, the two kings of Midian, fled, but he pursued them and captured them, routing their entire army. Now, if you look at an atlas of the Bible lands at this time, this is about a 50 to 60 mile chase on foot. No horses, no chariots, a 50 to 60 mile chase. Gideon is relentless. He's oppressively constant. He's never ending. He is after it. Verse 13, Gideon, son of Joash, then returned from the battle by the pass of Heres. He caught a young man of Succoth and questioned him, and the young man wrote down for him the names of the 77 officials of Succoth, the elders of the town. Then Gideon came and said to the men of Succoth, "Here are Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you taunted me by saying, 'Do you already have the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna in your possession? Why should we give bread to your exhausted men?' He took the elders of the town and taught the men of Succoth a lesson by punishing them with desert thorns and briars. He also pulled down the tower of Peniel and killed the men of the town." Verse 18. Then he asked Zebah and Zalmunna, "What kind of men did you kill at Tabor?" "Men like you," they answered, "each with the bearing of a prince." Gideon replied, "Those were my brothers, the sons of my own mother. As surely as the Lord lives, if you had spared their lives, I would not kill you." Turning to Jether, his oldest son, he said, "Kill them." But Jether did not draw his sword because he was only a boy and was afraid. Zebah and Zalmunna said, "Come do it yourself. As is the man, so is his strength." So Gideon stepped forward and killed them and took the ornaments off their camels' necks. Really cool story, isn't it? In our culture and in our time, we would say this was some hideous sort of child emotional abuse. And, to put your son in this place to do your dirty work for you, that's just horrible by our standards. But let's think back here and try to shed our own feelings about this for a moment. Those enemies had a point. As is the man, so is his strength. So they were essentially telling him he was the old Gideon in the winepress, the weakest of the weak. At any point along here, Gideon could have folded and reverted back to his personality, his weak old self, but he doesn't. He finishes it himself, and we have to be proud of him that he stayed in mighty warrior mode, and he was relentless, and he finished the deed. He didn't make his son do it. He did it himself, and his son was quite young. If we can, for a moment, strip away our cultural biases and our opinions we have currently and look at what he did, killing those leaders himself, that actually is an excellent and praiseworthy thing. He didn't look back. He didn't fold. He didn't say, "Oh, you're so right. I am a wimp. I am the weakest of the weak. I am the least in my clan." No. He did the deed himself, finished the work set before him. He didn't cave in or revert back to his old ways when he was challenged. He stayed true to his calling. He did a mighty warrior thing. Graham Cook has a quote. He says, "Once you get this, once you get your true persona, how God sees you, how heaven sees you, once you get this, you have to stay there." Isn't that good? There are going to be challenges that come our way every day, things that challenge us to think we are less than a mighty warrior. Are we going to be relentless, or are we going to cave and fold? It takes practice. It takes patience. It takes stick-with-itiveness, if I can make up a word. We have to keep after it. We have to keep after it. And we are going to be taunted by others, just like Gideon was. There are going to be people who try to speak back into our personality and get us to fold and get us to revert back. But a mighty warrior is relentless and sticks with it and finishes the deed. Look at Gideon so far. He has calmed this internal storm with his own brothers. He has 300 exhausted men pursuing. He tries to get them provisions 2 times. Provisions are denied. He sticks with it. He captures the 2 kings. He routs the entire army of 15,000 men with his 300 men. He goes back. He makes good on his promise to repay those who didn't help him. He finishes the job himself. He's relentless. Do you have trouble finishing a job? Do you have trouble when you have committed yourself to something verbally? Do you have trouble coming back at it and finishing the job and doing what you said you would and committed yourself to do? Remember, a mighty warrior is relentless and will come after it and finish the job. Will do what he says he's going to do. That's mightiness. That's warriorness. Committing to something and then finishing the job.